I've done a few videos like this in the past, where I basically create a story based on an event from FNaF, whether theoretical or canonical, and I try to do my own spin on the event so that I can fit it well into a narrative format. For this fan story, we'll be going over the Bite of 83. I should preface this by saying that the bite victim will obviously be in this, and I'll be calling him Evan throughout the video. I don't really believe that to be his name, but it's just a placeholder, as in a narrative format, it doesn't really make any sense for me to call him the crying child or bite victim. There's some other parts of this story that I'm unsure whether or not I believe, but I like this narratively, and that's why I chose to opt for it for this video. But with all that out of the way, let's get started with this fan-made FNaF short story titled Chomped. It was the worst day of the year. Michael watched as Fredbear's family diner piled up with more and more people here for the birthday boy. Once again, his little brother Evan was stealing all the attention. The relationship between Michael and his father was always a bit rocky, even from birth. His mom let him know of that. William Afton wasn't the greatest father. He was almost always away, off at work at Fredbear's family diner, or his new restaurant Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. He was never home, and when he was, he never used to spend time with Michael. But when Evan was born, it seemed like all his emphasis was put on him. It was questionable whether this attention was good attention, but Michael always just wished that he could have some of it for himself. And now his dad was having another child, one who he would definitely focus on even more. He couldn't believe that. It had been just a few years since Mike lost his mom. That had made him even more angry and unpleasant to be around than he already was. Not only was it bad to have lost his mom, but it was even worse that his father had become an alcoholic and was even harder on both of them. Now it was Michael's job to take care of his younger brother. Even though he did envy him and sometimes took that anger out on him, he truly did care for and love his little brother, and he understood that a single alcoholic father didn't create the best environment for a 6-year-old boy, or, well, a 7-year-old boy now, so he did try his best to keep his brother safe from his father, especially when he was in his drunken state, which he was quite often. Michael looked around the now slightly crowded Fredbear's family diner. He noticed Evan sitting at a table with his cake in front of him with his friend Eric. Neither looked entirely happy. Evan seemed to be on the verge of tears, and neither of them said anything. Michael knew why when he scanned the restaurant further. Charlotte wasn't there. About a month before, Evan snuck out of the house and came home at nearly 1 a.m. with an extremely distressed look on his face. He didn't speak to us for weeks, especially when it was revealed on TV that Charlotte, Evan's best friend and the daughter of Henry, the co-founder of Freddy's, had gone missing. Everyone knew the truth. There were rumors that her body was found outside Fredbear's by the police, but no one could prove it. Michael's gaze landed on an area of the restaurant blocked off by caution tape with a large but empty prize box. Mike! Michael turned around at the sound of his name. "Dude, where were you? I said your name like 5 times, Michael's friend Brock said. Michael realized he'd gotten caught up in the restaurant around him. Who wouldn't? The restaurant had a perfect mix of sounds, smells, songs, colors, food. The only thing he hated about it was that he could never come here with his friends for fun. His dad never let him leave the house. They only ever went here for Evan. "What's up?" Michael asked his friends, Brock, David, and Fritz. "We were thinking," Fritz began, "that since you're so upset about being here, why don't we pull a prank on the little guy? He doesn't like the animatronics, right? Maybe we could all dress up as animatronics and scare him." Michael thought back to the past few days. Evan had stuffed animals of nearly all the Freddy Fazbear characters, including Foxy, Michael's favorite. To scare his brother, Michael ripped off the head of the Foxy plush and wore it on his head around the house. He scanned the restaurant again, but when he looked back at his friends, he saw that David was pointing towards a stand where you could buy masks of the Fazbear characters. Michael rushed toward the stand, and his friends followed suit. After he and his friends got masks of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, Michael came up with an idea. He'd always thought that Evan's fear of the animatronics was irrational, so he came up with a way to scare him, but also at the same time show him that he's being stupid. So, he came up with a plan. Michael wanted to put his brother into the mouth of the Fredbear animatronic. At first, he thought the idea was stupid, that if he resists too much it could actually hurt him, but he'd come up with a solution for that. Although Michael and his father weren't exactly close, he did sometimes walk in on him working on robotics of his own. His dad sometimes taught Michael how some robotics and animatronic functions worked. He knew that Fredbear was built with spring locks, which were a series of locks that held back the metal in an animatronic so it could be worn as a suit or allow the metal within to provide structure for it to function as an animatronic. Individual locks were positioned all throughout the suit, but the ones Michael needed access to were the spring locks on the jaws. Michael loosened the spring locks on Fredbear's jaw, allowing the mouth to open wider than it would be able to otherwise. This would make room for Evan's head to fit inside the mouth without him getting too hurt if he continuously squirmed. Michael and his friends were now crowded around Evan. He could feel the eyes of other patrons locked on him and his friends, and the restaurant was silent. The next few moments were a blur. Michael couldn't even remember exactly what happened. All he could remember was the sound. Oh, the sound. The sound of spring locks snapping back into place as a result of pressure and moisture. The sound of screams and gasps reverberating through the restaurant, and the distinct sound of Evan's skull being crushed. He couldn't move. His friends looked at each other, tearing off their masks to reveal true horror on all of their faces. But Michael didn't have the strength to move an inch. It was a miracle Evan hadn't died instantly. With his skull being crushed, you would expect the brain to have been damaged to the point of no recovery. But while there was no recovery, Evan continued to live for nearly 24 hours. Michael's father wouldn't bat an eye at Michael. He also didn't seem to feel any emotion but anger. Anger at Michael for what he'd done to his little brother that he swore to protect, that he cared about more than life itself. It was just supposed to be a prank, but it went too far, and Michael knew that. And he knew that there was no going back. Michael's father left the room, leaving Michael in the hospital room with his brother, lying on a hospital bed in a coma, hooked up to an IV drip with a table next to his bed, with flowers. Michael leaned in closer to his brother. "Can you hear me?" he said, followed by a sigh. "I don't know if you can hear me." Michael didn't know what there was to say to his brother. The only words he could get out were, "I'm sorry." And he was. He was truly sorry for what he'd done. But he couldn't fix what he'd done. Could he?